Back in 1859, brothers Cornwall and Wallace Kirkpatrick opened a pottery factory in Anna, Illinois. The Kirkpatricks had located a source of kaolin clay north of Jonesboro that was perfect for making fine stoneware that would soon be the raw material for a thriving business.
But it wasn't just the fine, light brown clay that would assure their success. Moreover, it was the creative genius that transformed the squishy clay into surprisingly earthy figures of frogs, snakes, and pigs that tell us a lot about the era and its politics through their imaginative use of symbolism and irony.
Over the years, their creations have been recognized as not just novel stoneware, but as highly coveted and extremely collectible pieces of art. Just Google Anna Pottery, and you'll see a thriving trade for these items as people pay thousands and thousands of dollars to own one of these unique treasures.
Anna Pottery is all over the internet, but you don't have to pay a king's ransom to learn more about this distinctly regional slice of history. Debbie Whitlatch visited 2 museums in our area that feature collections of Anna Pottery and found some people who were very eager to talk about it.
Each collection is very different, but when taken together, they portray a fascinating picture of a once thriving industry that helped put Anna, Illinois on the map as the birthplace of a truly American form of artistic expression.
We're here on South Main Street in Anna, right in front of Isom's Antiques. In fact, one of the world's greatest collections of Anna Pottery is here. Come with me as we meet Mike Isom, the owner.
Hi, I'm Mike. We have a great selection of Anna Pottery to look at, so let's go in and get started. We have a lot of ground to cover.
Great.
Being a museum, we want to talk about the pottery itself. Shown below is a photo, a reproduction photo of the pottery building itself. And the pottery was founded by Cornwall and Wallace Kirkpatrick. The gentleman above the photo is a Cornwall Kirkpatrick in his older age. And above is a Cornwall Kirkpatrick in his younger age with a wonderful 4-foot urn with his children climbing in and out of it. Here is a wonderful grouping of Anna Pottery pig bottles. They're nationally known. Anna pigs have put people on the map, and we'll talk about those later and discuss what makes Anna pigs so fascinating to people. As we pass down the aisleway, we're looking at utility items made by the Anna Pottery for day-to-day living. We have large garden urns for ornamentation. And if you notice, one of the primary products that the Anna Pottery made was tobacco pipes, which would be smoked with a reed stem. As you notice, we see just thousands of pipe bowls. These were broken and dug up from a dump site, and Anna Pottery produced pipe bowls daily by the thousands, and they have a St. Louis customer who literally bought 2 million pipe bowls a year for 4 years in a row, so they produce pipe bowls by the millions. We look at a long stretch of drain tile, which I excavated from a yard of a house built right around 1870, and upon excavation of the tile, I numbered them, and these drain tile are literally assembled in the order that they were laid in the ground, late 1860s, early 1870s. We pass on by and just see an enormity of their day-to-day utility wares that they produce. We look at milk bowls. That was a common day-to-day vessel used for day-to-day living. We have a nice salt glazed canner with a blue stripe, which is a beautiful piece. Actually, that shows the firing technique. When items were loaded in the kiln, they were stacked up. And if you could imagine, maybe this item was stacked above that jar and the blue dripped down. And when the kiln cooled, the blue streak froze in space.
Mike Isom calls these everyday pottery items enablers because they were the bread and butter of this pottery manufacturing firm.
And by selling millions of tobacco pipes, hundreds of thousands of drain tiles, tens of thousands of crocks and jars, that produced money to keep the pottery going, and that freed up Cornwall and Wallace. It enabled them and freed up their time and freed up their money and freed up their creativity to make this socially reflective, economically reflective, bizarre wares that the Anna Pottery is known for. There's 2 items that have really put Anna Pottery on the map. The figural pig whiskey bottles, which we'll talk about in a few minutes, and snake jugs. Let me give you a little background on what the snake jugs are and why they're so great. Cornwall Kirkpatrick was one of the brothers that ran the pottery, and he was the first mayor of Anna, and he was mayor for 3 terms total. While he was mayor, Anna just battled with the temperance movement. It would be a dry town, a wet town. It's just back and forth and back and forth. And being pro-temperance most of the time, Cornwall, it's written, sided with the temperance movement. Wallace is known as the modeler, and it's evident that he had a very in-depth knowledge of snakes.
May I lift this?
Yeah.
That's wonderful.
Yeah, this is definitely the hand of Wallace. We discussed Wallace earlier as being a snake trapper and having a snake show, and this is just one of the finest snakes that I've seen on any Anna vessel of any kind. The scales are perfect, the motion is perfect, it looks like it's writhing, ready to jump out and strike you. And again, this parallels the temperance theme of the Anna Pottery as don't touch this jug or you're going to get bit. So that's just a wonderful, wonderful temperance piece.
I can see why he's under a dome.
The snake jugs come in a variety of styles. Each one was custom made by the Kirkpatrick brothers. They represent a collaboration of ideas and talent.
They combine their 2 interests to produce some of the greatest works of art ever made. It's just hard to beat Anna snake jugs. And if you notice on this jug, the snakes are coming from within. So the snakes are the whiskey, and the whiskey is coming out of the jug to engulf people that indulge in this devil's brew. This jug is a temperance snake jug. It's a little more simple, but actually to me, this jug may have more of a temperance theme because its appearance is very ominous. You have this small whiskey jug with 9 black vipers crawling amidst the jug, nesting around the jug. So when you go for a drink, they're just going to strike you and hang on.
The Kirkpatrick brothers are also famous for their pig bottles. Many have railroad themes like this one. Others have advertisements, some even featuring saloons.
So this is a Peter Staff saloon pig. And actually on the reverse side of this pig is a poem which discusses drink of whiskey. And actually the poem says not to indulge in the whiskey, which again parallels that pro-temperance theme. The pig bottle is a bit of a mystery, because everything points pro-temperance, and then they're making whiskey bottles by the thousands to drink whiskey out of. Some people say they were just hypocritical, and other people see the pig bottle as a temperance piece, because in order to drink whiskey out of the pig, they call them whiskey pigs. You didn't drink out of their nose, and you didn't drink out of the back. You had to go to the business end to drink whiskey out of the pig. This has World's Fair 1893, and it has a wonderfully green painted frog cup.
Frog cups were another novelty produced by the Kirkpatricks. They were purely a whimsical item.
The frog cups are just witty, comical items to show the humor of the Anna Pottery. This frog cup is interesting. It has a cold painted green frog, and it is setting in a pool of water that they made with a salt glaze. So that one is setting with water in the bottom of the cup. And that's one of the cups I purchased from a lady in her late 80s or 90s, and she drank out of that at her grandmother's house, and that is the only way that she would drink her milk, was to drink it out of her frog cup. From going through this segment and looking at the Anna Pottery items, we're just aware of their humor, their satire, their quirkiness, their social commentary.
Mike Isom's most unusual piece involves a dispute between the United States and England.
This piece has generated a lot of interest because this is an 1880s piece. It's Victorian, proper times, and it literally has a profanity literally written on the ball are 500 pounds, and what they're rolling starts with an S and ends with a T, and you could fill the letters in between.
High? Would it be high?
No, it's not height.
This motif was used repeatedly in an item they made for the World's Fair.
The most interesting novelties are perfume pots. Again, everybody keep this in mind. This is the 1893 World's Fair at Chicago. It's innovation. We're cutting edge. We're turning the century. So this is the best of the best, the newest, the brightest. And these are novelties that Cornwall and Wallace took to the World's Fair to show this innovation, this cutting edge, this moving, this seriousness, this jumping into the future. It's a perfume pot. Fine perfume from the World's Fair 1893. And this is the same. This one was filled in with white clay where it's more legible. And I have 3 of these in my museum collection. I see a fair amount of them. So actually, these were a very popular item that was a purchase novelty from the Kirkpatricks at the World Fair.
There's something inside.
I wonder what that scent is. It's fine perfume. So the Kirkpatricks go to Chicago with an innovation, World's Fair of Progress, and they take chamber pots and put fine perfume on them and fill them with an enormous turd pile in there. And that just really shows the humor of these guys while everybody else was there showing the greatest technology. They just simply showed Southern Illinois humor.
Another collection featuring Anna pottery that is very different from the pieces in Mike Isom's collection is housed at the Union County Museum in Compton.
Hi.
Hi.
Welcome to the Union County Museum.
Thanks.
I'm sure as you can see, we're a fairly typical museum in Southern Illinois. We have a lot of the usual kinds of exhibits, but what we're really famous for is our collection of Anna pottery made by the Kirkpatrick brothers. And I'm sure when you walked through the door, the first thing you saw was this striking piece.
It was. And it looks like a crown, but I have a feeling that's way too big for a crown.
That's right. Well, it could be a crown of
Really?
sort. It's called a chimney pot, and originally it was made for River Lore Mansion in Cairo, Illinois. When we first saw this piece, it was literally in pieces. There were 2 boxes of it, and it was at a local estate sale in Cairo. We tried to purchase the piece at that time and were not successful because we thought it brought too much money for the condition that it was in, because we actually did not know whether or not all of the pieces were there. So a friend and fellow collector from Paducah, Kentucky, purchased the pieces. A year and a half later, he called us and told us that he had had the piece restored professionally. He was very gracious, very generous, and it was more important to him that the piece be preserved and kept locally. So he sold the item to us for what we considered a very reasonable sum. So as a result, it's here today for everyone to enjoy. The items in this case are for the most part utilitarian.
Okay.
Of course, a jug, like a syrup jug, and an open crock would be used for storage, lard, something along those lines. Everyday use, right. The items here on the bottom shelf are just sewer tile. And again, that was one of the primary things that they made to make money with. And of course, these have all been found and dug in the city of Anna. On the far end is an extremely rare piece. It was the cover for a cemetery urn. As far as we know, it is the only one still in existence. Really? And of course it has the typical decoration of acanthus leaves, which the Kirkpatricks used on a lot of their items. But this, of course, would have been used to place over the top of a cemetery marker.
One of the more common items made by the Kirkpatricks were vases and funeral urns. Patrick Brumlevy explains how some of these ended up in the museum.
They were cemetery markers or urns that the local cemeteries agreed for us to save because they were just out there in the open in the cemetery, and if we hadn't come along and saved them and brought them into our museum, they probably would have been completely destroyed by now. The fair jugs and the umbrella stand that we have, again, were saved by local people who donated the pieces to the museum.
And the Kirkpatricks each year for many years made a fair jug. These jugs were made to commemorate the county fairs. And so they are, of course, highly decorated, incised, and gray stoneware with cobalt blue decoration.
Mike Isom also has a unique fair jug at his museum.
And the purpose of this jug was to record this fair event. And what he did is he literally incised programs that you would get at the gate. He incised that total program on this fair jug.
The items with the cobalt blue lettering also feature a shiny finish called a salt glaze.
The salt vapor would fuse to the semi-solid silica. The salt would hit the heat, vaporize, and fume. And since salt is sodium chloride, one of the byproducts of that process was chlorine gas. Potters throughout the country died because they were overcome and gassed by chlorine gas. And here's a wonderful example of salt glaze. This glassy glaze would be the result of the salt glaze process. And that was a technique that the Kirkpatricks used, and it's just such a durable, beautiful finish.
Pristine.
Yeah.
And as I was growing up, I'd see those pieces every day in the museum, and I didn't think anything about them.
Patrick Brumlevy's grandfather ran the Compton Museum, and Patrick donated many of that museum's pieces to the Historical Society's museum.
So we acquired this building. It was donated to us in 1987, and we restored the building and then opened the museum and used a lot of the contents of the Compton Museum to fill the museum.
That is so, oh my, that is amazing. That's the 10 Commandments.
The Holy Grail for Anna Pottery enthusiasts would be a one-of-a-kind item or a collection like these tiles.
This is a really interesting group of tiles. Tell me the story behind them.
The story is very interesting on how we acquired these tile. The museum had recently purchased a jug at an auction, and we received considerable publicity on it because we had paid quite a bit for it. And so there was a period where people were bringing in pieces into the museum, wanting them evaluated. Everyone thought that they had a very valuable piece of Kirkpatrick pottery. Well, one day a gentleman came in with 2 galvanized buckets full of these tile wrapped up in newspaper, and I unwrapped them, and I was just absolutely shocked when I saw them, and I recognized immediately that they were Kirkpatrick pottery pieces.
I absolutely could not believe my eyes that something like this was still intact and in someone's garage. It was overwhelming that, you know, these kinds of things were still here.
What we know about it is that they were all in a fireplace hearth, and in a cabin, and that the owner of the cabin decided that after he had sold it that he wanted these pieces.
He thought these tiles would make a nice top for a table, and so that's why he wanted them.
And they have graciously put them on permanent loan for us at the museum so that everyone can enjoy these, because there's no other pieces like this located anywhere in the United States.
But it was just, it was one of those aha moments that, you know, it's just unbelievable that something like that still existed.
And they made very common things, common things for potteries to make, like jugs and jars.
Everyone associated with the museum gushes over this display as the only one of its kind.
This was their bread and butter, but the things that they made that were unique and one of a kind, like these tiles, this one being a picture of the actual pottery in Anna, and it shows all the little details, and it's just wonderful.
Pat Meller is also excited about an exclusive photograph the Union County Museum has obtained.
This is a display made out of clay. The figures are made out of clay of a typical pioneer farm. Nobody has ever seen an actual piece. It has just never been seen. Now it has been described in many newspapers. And one of the descriptions says that it was so real, it brought tears to one's eyes.
The cat actually descended through the Kirkpatrick family originally.
Not all of the Kirkpatrick brothers' pottery was realistic or stunning in its beauty.
And no, the eyes aren't original. The eyes were put in there probably in the 1940s or 50s.
Even the odd pieces they made are now considered treasures.
I'm not sure I could call this one gorgeous.
No, this is a bit different.
One of the more uncharacteristic pieces obtained by the museum is this ceramic head that looks like Lincoln.
Is typically referred to by collectors as the Lincoln death mask. We're not sure that that's what it is.
It was possibly used for Masonic rituals, but it is called a Lincoln death mask.
Most people thought that this was not an actual piece of Anna pottery. Now it is signed and dated on the underneath side. This is hollow. And it's signed and dated, and it has the typical signature. But an antiques dealer who was at that auction, because this piece was at the back on a farm wagon along with used toilet stools and various other sorts of riffraff or items that were not too desirable, and it was just, you know, there on this wagon among all this other stuff. And so one of the local antiques dealers assured everyone that this was probably made by a student in a class, you know, in high school, and that it was not authentic. Well, none of us disputed him, and no one asked several of the people from the Historical Society were at that auction, and no one asked us our opinion, and so we did not volunteer our opinion. So when the item came up for sale, we of course were able to purchase it and got it for a fairly reasonable sum, because about a month later we do know of one that sold for in the $10,000 to $12,000 range.
Oh my.
So we were very lucky, and often thank that antiques dealer for telling everyone that it was made by
High school project.
as a high school project.
I love it. How serendipitous.
Right, absolutely.
While the Union County Museum has many unique pieces of Anna pottery, the curators would also like to get some of the pottery's signature pieces.
Obviously, we are missing pieces that people always talk about, such as the pig jugs, the frog in the mug piece, the snakes, the famous snake jugs. We don't have any examples of those, and of course we are always looking for pieces and for people to actually, you know, loan or donate us those kind of pieces.
This is the heart of Anna Pottery country. Visits to both Isom's Museum and the Union County Museum present a perfect way to experience the genius of the Kirkpatrick brothers. Both museums are actively seeking more examples of this pottery and expect to find many because Southern Illinois is a hotbed for new discoveries.
Being located where we are some of the items that I am able to acquire for the museum collection are really personal. They never left Union County, and they have a tie that ties them uniquely. Actually, this pig was a local pig that was purchased by local people. They traveled to the World's Fair and bought the pig.
And brought it back.
And brought it back to Anna, and it descended through the family, and I was able to purchase this a few years ago again to keep it in town, and it had a pretty long travel.
One of the most interesting things about the pottery is the fact that there is so much out there and that more pieces show up all the time. It's just astounding how many different kinds of things come to light. And of course, money does a lot of that. When people see that something brings $20,000, of course, they start searching their attics and their basements and wondering about something that maybe that has been in their family for generations.
Isom's Museum and the Union County Museum are not the only places in Southern Illinois with Anna pottery on display. The Stinson Library in Anna also has a collection, and there are undoubtedly many private collections in the area as well. We'll keep our ear to the ground for people that may have such collections for later programs.
In fact, we're always on the lookout for any impressive collections, be it bottles, wood carvings, or old tractors. We know that where there is a collector with a passion for what they do, there's an opportunity for us to learn and experience how these items connect us with our past.
That's it for this edition of WSIU in Focus. Be sure to join us again as we explore what's unique and what's important to this region.
Video copies of this program are available. To order, call our customer service department at 618-453-6184.